Welcome to the David Spisak Show. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me. You are going to be, I think, fascinated by this gentleman in a number of ways. And the timing is good because I'm not going to give it away right now, but certainly some things have transpired that seemingly could have been perceived as a tectonic shift in the landscape of this particular aspect of automotive. I want to introduce you to Jimmy Douglas. I've known Jimmy. I've had the pleasure of knowing Jimmy for a number of years now, and he is a truly interesting, fascinating, brilliant guy. And Jimmy happens to be the founder and CEO of Plug, and Plug is the very first of its kind. Plug is a platform that allows dealers of any variety from any area to find really highly curated, beautiful, pre-owned EVs, and they could use the platform to either buy EVs or sell EVs. And so without any further ado, first and foremost, Jimmy Douglas, thank you for taking the time to join me.
Thanks for having me, David. It's a pleasure to be here.
It was a little bit of a road for us to get together here. But I have no doubt it will be very worthwhile in terms of conversation. Now, I'm going to be a little bit selfish, and I'll digress for just a second. For anybody out there that says, God, that's terrible that dude's selfish. Listen, everybody, let me bring the kids around. Boys and girls, let me tell you something. Our parents all told us not to be selfish, right? And they had goodness in their hearts when they did that, but they didn't tell us the rest of the story. Right? Because if you are truly unselfish your entire life, you will never be able to enter into self-development, right? Being able to do anything for yourself that makes you a better person, that allows you to serve the people around you better than you ever could have without that. So this sounds selfish, a little bit self-serving, and it is, but I have this curiosity that I've known Jimmy for a while. I don't know where the heck Jimmy came from. And I know just a little bit about your background, but I would love for everybody listening to be able to learn how in the heck did you end up here? You and I are talking right here, right now. And that happened because of Plug. But some things happened previous to that, if we rewind the tape, where you started somewhere, maybe out of school or wherever it was, that you started on this journey, Jimmy, that landed you right here, right now. What did that look like? How'd you start out? How'd you end up in the car business? How'd you end up with Plug?
Yeah, thank you. It started with growing up, like many of us that either end up starting a business or in the automotive industry, or in many cases, both. It started at home. I was born in Northern California in a town called Los Gatos, and my father was a startup founder of a company called Test Point One, located in San Jose, California. And this was the late 70s, early 80s, sort of the activation of the semiconductor industry in that region. And I grew up going to the office. I have photos of myself on my third birthday at a conference room table, like most kids that are 3 years old, surrounded by printed circuit boards and engineers and salespeople running around. And that was just what was normal for me at that time. My father and his business partner exited the company in the early 90s when I was a 6-year-old, and we actually moved to a Christmas tree farm in Eagle Creek, Oregon, not far from where you are today. Wow. Yeah. So the retirement plan was to have some fun, I suppose. My father and his business partner, same person, started building replica vintage 1930s Packards and attempting to sell them on the internet, which in the year 1993, you can probably guess pretty accurately how well that went, but I'm sure they had a good time. But that was also my introduction into automobiles, which actually led me into getting a dealership job when I was fairly young. I started at Armstrong Volkswagen, also pretty close to you, in Gladstone, Oregon, when I was a 17-year-old as a lot attendant. And I became a service advisor there before I actually had a high school diploma, and put myself through Portland State in that job. I took a detour from the car business for a while. I had a fairly traditional software career. I worked at Smarsh for nearly a decade in Portland. I moved to San Francisco, joined a fintech startup. But then I found my way inside of Tesla in 2018, which was when Tesla at the time was the most shorted company in the world. Elon was literally sleeping in the factory, and we were sprinting as if our lives depended on it to figure out how to build 5,000 Model 3s per week and build one for $35,000. And it was that experience combined with a personal interest in used cars, having owned 30 different cars before I was 30, that led me into the used car team there. Eventually becoming sort of the general manager of that business unit for Tesla across North America. So at that point in time, it sort of made me the biggest used EV salesperson in the world if you were to distill the work of that incredible team down into my job. And in that capacity, we were the largest wholesaler and retailer of used EVs for several years. And that's what gave me the inspiration to build Plug. I see a transformation happening across automotive retail where EVs are a catalyst. And the secondary vehicle market, particularly the wholesale component of it, needs a transformation as well. So that these vehicles can flow to the best next owner as efficiently as possible. And I saw that as a very meaningful opportunity to build a brand new company. So living in Silicon Valley, I raised money from fairly well-known venture capitalists, Floodgate, A-Star, Autotech Ventures, and several others, and started the company one day after I left Tesla, which was March 21st, 2023. And now, here we are.
So, okay, so 2023, so just literally 2 short years ago.
Right.
And I remember, Jimmy, I had you on my Disruptive Forces in Retail Automotive virtual event on EVs.
That's right.
And so that would have been just shortly after you launched Plug, right? I remember the platform was live and there was cars on it, and you were starting to get the word out to dealers and starting to sell. I think at that time, if I recall, and I could go back and find the notes, but I think at that time you literally had sold maybe around 25 EVs at that time. It was pretty early on. Where are you now?
Yeah, I remember that day very well. I believe Alex Lawrence was on that call. That's too, right. And he was actually the first dealer to buy a car on Plug, and that was on September 1st, 2023, which was exactly 699 days ago. And 2 minutes, David, I'm not making this up, 2 minutes before I got on this Zoom to meet with you, we just sold our 1,000th EV.
Very cool. Congratulations. So a long way down the highway of a startup, from one car with Alex Lawrence at EVs Only. For those of you that never heard of Alex Lawrence, really brilliant guy, gutsy guy, who decided to create a really beautiful environment, showroom to sell EVs only, I believe in Salt Lake City, if I remember right.
Bountiful, Utah, EV Auto.
Oh, that's
it's a
right.
Great
It's Bountiful,
spot.
Utah. You look it up. And he's actually opening up one, I want to say outside of Franklin, Tennessee.
That's right.
Pretty soon. So things are going well for Alex. I'm happy to hear that. And so now, there's the Alpha with Alex, and now the Omega, the other side of it, is 1,000 vehicles. And that was purchased by a EV dealer, a retail dealer, franchise dealer. Who was it?
Franchise dealer. So here's an interesting stat for you. There's a pretty even distribution of dealers inside of Plug. There's about 500 now, and it's about 50-50 franchise dealer versus independent dealer. But about 60% of the buying is from franchise dealer. And mind you, we're talking about a CDJR store that buys used Teslas as a very common example. And I'll also mention that 78% of our dealers are outside of California. So a lot of ideas that people have in their mind about the actual makeup of Plug's dealers and the distribution is not necessarily aligned with the data. The data is far more interesting.
And speaking of interesting, the percentage you said that's outside of California is 75%?
78.
78% is out, which is interesting because there is no state in the country that comes close to California in terms of the rate of sales for new EVs, right? I believe that California, 1 out of every 4 new cars in 2024 sold was an EV. And you contrast that with the United States or the industry as a whole of somewhere around 9%, depends on who you listen to.
Right.
I'm a fan of Jonathan Smoke and his team, DJ Smokey Smoke, aka.
Oh yeah,
and his
I
team,
love DJ Smokey Smoke.
his team of
Do we
12.
call him DJ Smokey Smoke, or is it just DJ Johnny Smoke? I need to
Think
clarify that
DJ
one.
Smokey Smoke is on good authority. Good
Got
authority,
it.
i.e., is Jonathan. AKA is Jonathan. So, but I love their team and what they do in the industry, and I trust their numbers. But let's call it somewhere around 9%. So big contrast. You're almost talking about 3 times as many in California, but yet nearly 8 out of 10 dealers that are on your platform are outside of California. What do you make of that?
The used EV market is wildly distributed. There's 3 nationwide retailers that sell a colossal amount of them, which amounts to the same as the next 300 dealers.
You're talking about CarMax, Carvana,
and Tesla.
Yeah.
That's right. Those 3 sell as much as the next 300 dealers combined. The majority of dealers completely opt out of used EVs. So the ones that are in it are really aggressive about acquiring the best inventory. Another interesting stat for you about them actually is roughly half of our sales involve an out-of-state move, and the average out-of-state move is 800 miles. We, as an extreme example, we sold a Lucid Air last week. I think it was like $63,000 from the middle of Alabama, and the dealer that bought it is in the state of Washington.
Wow. So is it fair to say a couple things? Is it fair to say that dealers that just absolutely opted out, I'm not touching it with a 10-foot pole, are missing something? They've missed out on an opportunity. Is that fair to say?
You know, most people expect me to say that in a very generalized way, but there's actually, it's possible, but there's more nuance to it. Here's the reality is that the dealers like the Alex Lawrences of the world that are crushing it in used EVs, they're doing it because they've created somewhat of a magnet for people who are pursuing the used EV lifestyle. So people are going to them, and that means they have plenty of inventory to select from, and they have a whole team of people who are very well equipped to walk people through that educational journey, and almost always drawing from firsthand experience, which is the best way to do it. The used EV market is still pretty small in the grand scheme. It's 2% of the used car market overall. So that means there's actually not enough used EVs to go around for every dealer to do that. And a losing strategy is being a dealer that has no specialty or magnetism in used EVs and stocking one occasionally. But that vehicle is not going to sell very quickly. So what I've actually seen is those who have the most success with used EVs are either all in from a retail perspective, or if they're not all in and they're occasionally receiving one as a trade-in, for example, they're actually better off just finding the quickest wholesale path and moving it out of the way to a dealer that can better capitalize on it. So in summary, certainly there are dealers that are not in this market that are missing an opportunity today. But because the market's so small and because winning in this market is a game of having density of supply of the vehicle and demand for it, not everybody can crush it right now. So
no, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I mean, let's face it, there are literally markets and regions, even states in this country where it's not happening. It may not ever happen, just because of the sheer volume of miles somebody drives a year makes it not possible. They live in, condo dense, apartment dense areas. They don't have charging infrastructure, whatever it might be. But there's also areas that I found that do have a market, whether it be 3, 4, 5% new car market. Number one. Number two, I say it because you go out there and you look at 20, 21, 22 Model 3s that started out relatively unaffordable. I mean, they weren't they were not very affordable, but as pre-owned cars, they're some of the best values maybe on the marketplace. When you see those things out at 20, 21, 22 grand, show me another car you're going to find with that technology, with that performance, with that year for that amount of money. It's extraordinary. And I know dealers that are not EV dealers or even EV minded. They're profit minded. They're supply and demand minded. They're I want to sell used car minded. And as soon as they figured out that became pre-owned EVs, whether it's used 3s, used Ys, used Ionics, whatever it might be, they said, holy cow, I have been missing out. And while there's not certainly enough supply for the country, there's actually, I think, ample supply for more dealers than are actually in the game full on today. Do you buy that?
Oh, absolutely. Full stop. That's definitely true. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens after September 30th and after the tax credits are fully eliminated. Because one thing I really want to touch on that you just said is actually the used Model 3 might be the best affordable car generally.
Period.
For a lot of people that weren't even considering an EV. And then when you get that $4,000 point of sale credit to use as a down payment, it in some cases becomes more financially accessible than a Nissan Sentra for some people. And what we saw was there was a really small number of dealers that were moving basically a third of the entire market outside the nationwide retailers. There's about 400 of them. In the last year, it's gone up to closer to 500, but it's primarily tax cars. So I'm really curious to see what happens after the used EV bonanza sort of goes on hiatus after this quarter is over when the tax credits go away, and how many of those dealers that came in more recently stay in the fold. And my prediction is that we'll lose some of them, and those who are really focused on it are going to continue to enjoy fairly limitless inventory pipelines.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance in that. So let's start with this. With the big, beautiful bill, it's going to cause, obviously, both the $7,500 federal tax credit on new as well as the $4,000 credit on used to disappear come September 30th. We fully expect there to be a surge, to say the least, of sales of both new and pre-owned EVs. And I would suspect, I'd be shocked if you're not seeing literally, if not now, in the coming 2 or 3 weeks, a surge of interest from dealers around the country who want to take advantage of this very small window. Keeping in mind, Alex was mentioning to myself and Alex Vetter at a meeting we were both at recently that the average EV stays on his lot for less than 10 days. And an EV with full self-driving, so Tesla full self-driving, 2 days. So for anybody out there that's a dealership, right, sales manager, used car manager, please compare those numbers with the turn rates of any used car you have in stock. Now, I will throw a little asterisk on there, Jimmy.
Go on.
Because you said something earlier. If you're a dealer that's all in, that has salespeople that are trained, because here's the thing.
That's right.
If somebody out there is a cigar smoker and you hang out with non-cigar smokers, okay, there's a disconnect there, to say the least, right? But if you hang out with other cigar smokers, cigar aficionados, there's this connection. And I see that similar vibe when it comes to EV. That EV buyer, they're different. They've got similarities. They want affordability. They want this, they want that, transparency. But they're different. And so when you have salespeople that are trained to understand how to talk about an EV, whether it's battery health, whether it's self-driving, whether it's features, functionality, whether it's performance, you're going to do that differently with that person than you will just a traditional used car buyer. Is that fair?
Not only is that fair, David, but the same is true in wholesale.
Wow, that's very interesting. So that's why, to me, if you're a dealership that has kind of paved that road a little bit, you've got the potential, I believe, to to have a spectacular August and September if you are utilizing a platform like yours and you can bulk up your inventory. Number two, let's not forget there's a backdrop here of a trough. We're in a trough of used car inventory, non-EV inventory. We're at the lowest point of availability where we've got more competition. We've got Carvana and CarMax with more money, resources than ever before. It's much harder to find used cars today, but you've got an opportunity. How many cars do you have on the platform today? Let's start there.
We are going to wrap up this month having sold 100 in the month with a sales conversion close to 100% for all intents and purposes.
So you typically will have 100 or more on at any given time.
Not at any given time. We sell out nearly every day.
Okay.
So on a normal day, there might be
you're like one of these fashion brands that come out with something and it's gone in 3 hours later.
Yeah.
So,
have you seen those TikToks where it's like they sell out in 2 seconds?
Yeah. It's like, what happened? But
yeah. Our listings come online.
If somebody's not a member of Plug, first of all, how do they become a member of Plug? Let's start there.
Yeah. Yeah, they just go to our website, plug.vin, V-I-N. There's a join form right on there. If you're a dealer, you enter your dealer license info, and we get you on usually the same day. We evaluate every dealer against the underwriting database of Auction Insurance Agency, and you can start bidding right away. We have a sale that starts at 6 a.m. Pacific, ends at noon Pacific every day. And generally speaking, most cars sell the first time that they're listed.
Every day, meaning Monday to Friday.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So if you are interested, if you do sell EVs, and if you want to kind of ramp up, level up, take advantage of this 2-month, very unique window, you can do that.
Let me also, if you don't mind, David, I'd also like to plug something for the other side of the coin, though.
No pun intended, plug something.
That's right. What if you're not looking for more EVs, but you're occasionally receiving one as a trade-in? This is actually a huge catalyst for our growth, and it's our trade desk. We launched it a few months ago, and there are many franchise stores in particular that are working on selling the new EV lineup that they have, and many of them are running conquest campaigns to go after existing EV owners. But receiving an EV as a trade-in is not a risk-free proposition, especially if you're not regularly retailing them or if it's a brand that you don't represent. So in launching Trade Desk, we give you a QR code for your showroom. We ask a very small number of questions about each vehicle and give you a live cash offer within 15 minutes. So if you receive that EV as a trade-in, you get your new car deal done. We become the owner of the car basically that day, and then we sell it on our own auction right off your lot, usually out of there in under 72 hours.
So giving people the ability to de-risk and have an exit strategy day one.
Fully de-risk. And I want to be clear, it's a cash offer from Plug. This is not a wholesale estimate. We take all of the risk.
Okay, very cool. Thank you for mentioning that. Let's talk about October 1st.
Yeah.
What do you see coming in all likelihood come October 1st? I see a tale of two dealers, right? I see a divergence, right? Or a start to split here to where I believe the EV only dealers of the world and the franchise dealers that do focus to some degree on EVs are not going to go away. I believe there's definitely going to be a depression, a dip. Demand will wane a bit, but supply on the good side will be more available for undoubtedly better pricing. And I do believe that it'll be after a number of maybe weeks, might be a couple months, but I do think that EV market is going to remain, because at the end of the day, people that want an EV, whether it costs them 21, 22 grand or 18 grand after the credit. I don't see that really being a long-term deterrent. It's going to be a pisser. It's going to be certainly, unfortunate. I just don't think that at that price point, it doesn't change the fact. Incentives on new cars don't make them necessarily affordable. Mm-hmm. It makes them less expensive, but it doesn't necessarily make them affordable. Do you get where I'm coming from? So
I do.
if the average car is 60 grand, the average person's paying 48 grand for a car, and the average household income's 81,000 and can't afford a $50,000 car, the fact that you put 1% interest or you put $3,000 rebate did not make the car affordable for me. It made it less expensive. And I think the other side of that is the $4,000 going away doesn't make that unaffordable. It makes it a little less fun, but the car still lands on its feet as being squarely affordable. It's under $25,000 for a 3 to 4 year old car. Fair?
Yeah. So I have 3 things to say on this topic.
Okay. So I'm going to frame the question again. What happens in your mind come October 1st? You think 3 things are likely to occur?
Yeah, that's right. So first of all, you mentioned that the incentives going away is not necessarily going to, the incentives being there didn't make the cars affordable. The incentives being there made them a bit more affordable. So it stands to reason that sales pacing will take a dip, but the affordability quotient didn't fundamentally change. But so much Q4 demand and Q1 demand is getting pulled into Q3 right now. So less so because of affordability, more so people rushing to beat this incentive cliff means that there are buyers that were otherwise going to buy in Q4, new and used, that will not be because they already bought. So that's thing number 1. It's going to put some pressure on sales for used, but more so for new EVs. Now, on number 2, we've been talking since starting this company about the impending lease return wave that's going to hit us in the face in 2026 because the Inflation Reduction Act and the tax credits hit in 2023. It's 3 years later. But what are manufacturers going to have to do when they don't have enough demand to sell their new EV lineup in Q4? They're at a 125-day supply right now as it is. They'll have to pull forward lease returns from 2026 into 2025. So I think that lease return wave we've all been talking about for 2026, actually Christmas comes early, so to speak, which also means more used EV supply entering the market. And the last thing is there's actually been some pricing deflation and inflation on used EVs because of the tax credits. And here's what I mean. Certain Model 3s in wholesale will never sell for more than $24,000 in change. And that's because dealers only want to buy cars that they can sell for 25 or under because of the tax credit. But that's actually depressed the values of some of the newer models. And I actually believe when demand normalizes, we'll actually start seeing those lift back up a bit north of that 24K mark. Similarly though, some of the older models that were getting pulled up, like a 2018, was getting pulled up closer and closer to 25K in wholesale because there was a tax credit to qualify. That will no longer be the case. So those will actually deflate. See what I mean?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. So when you think about all 3 of those, are you bullish come Q4, Q1, Q2, 2026? Or do you think that we're likely to see a significant adjustment period before we figure out how things kind of settle in?
Q4 is going to be a hangover, for sure.
So if you sit here as the CEO of Plug, what's the plan? What do you do with that?
Well, the good news is for us, there's still plenty of room to grow. We've just sold our 1,000th EV, right? Like we're not even scratching the surface. We're not even hitting it at a whole percentage point yet of the number of EVs that are flowing through wholesale rails on a monthly or quarterly basis. So for us, seasonality aside, where a lot of wholesale tends to start slowing down as you get closer to Christmas, I don't think it's an excuse for us to be slowing down in our growth ambitions. And mind you, our growth ambition for this quarter is 100% over last quarter. So we should be moving vehicles at a pace of 600 per quarter, where it was 300 last quarter for Q3. And then when we enter Q4, I don't have a forecast just yet, but it should be another very aggressive growth target, because as much as that hangover is going to be there, we're still really small, which means we have plenty of room to grow.
So while the industry at large definitely is going to see a depression in demand from a macro level, at plugs level, because you're just really still entering the market, the leading edge of the market, you still have the ability to grow and hit your numbers and beyond, even though you'll be doing it with a foundational depression in the EV used car market. And
I actually believe, not only do I believe that, David, but I believe we will be the best positioned to represent vehicles for consigners during that period, because that will be the true test of how important a differentiated approach to remarketing EVs really is. And what I saw back when I was running used cars and remarketing at an automaker that was selling more EVs than anyone was that a differentiated approach to representing nuances like batteries and software-enabled features, like you mentioned, sort of makes or breaks your margin profile. And suddenly, when every EV consigner is in an unfriendly macro environment, they should be looking for differentiated approaches. And we will be better positioned than ever to be growing in that quarter, despite what the broader climate is doing.
Hey, are you aware of any other individuals that are operating or moving in the direction of an Alex Lawrence, of an used EV approach?
Yeah.
I remember there's a gentleman named John in Carolina, I believe, wasn't that?
Yeah, John Foley, of course. Yeah, Recharged. So yeah, and you also have Al Salas. He's on the East Coast as well. There's not a lot of operations like that, but they are continuing to pop up.
So clearly there's some viability to them.
I've never seen a failure story yet for anybody that has reached our radar. Generally speaking, they are not running into demand headwinds if they are taking it seriously, stocking up on a diverse set of inventory, becoming subject matter experts themselves, ensuring that everyone on their team is a subject matter expert, and providing a great customer experience, which is not super different from really operating most businesses.
From a high level, let's get past the October 1st timeline. And as you move forward, it's not like EVs are going to disappear, right? It's not. Tesla's not going away, Rivian's not going away, Lucid's not going away, Polestar's not going away in the near future. But certainly, it is going to have a dramatic impact, right? Because the requirements to hit certain fuel economy levels, that's done, and it's going to start to get rolled back, which is going to cause manufacturers likely to put more money into creating ICE cars that are less expensive. That seems to be more of a situation, more of a problem in the new car sales world than certainly EVs or maybe even hybrids, right? Just can we get to a point of affordability? Mm-hmm. That also means OEMs are likely to, if not pull the plug, roll way back in terms of their thought processes or their physical investments in plants and so forth. You certainly have the likelihood that you're going to have more OEMs go down the path of hybrids for a number of reasons, from the fact that we're going to wake up and China's still going to control the supply chain. They're still going to control pricing. They control batteries. They control refineries that create the batteries. And so anything that you could do to reduce your reliance on that is going to be a good thing. And so if you add all this up, Jimmy, it seems like I don't see EVs going away, but have they seen their brightest day? Do you think that there's a scenario in your mind where the EV market as a whole, new car market, will somehow figure out how to grow despite seemingly now all the forces being headwinds?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you think about it in a global context. Right.
Well, are you talking about including China?
Sure. Yeah. But even if we don't, okay. So China's at 50% adoption while we're at 9%. Europe is at
15.
20%.
No, 15. EU is 15.
Okay.
If you go to the northern countries, obviously Norway,
Sure.
they're higher, but countries like Switzerland did away with the credits as well, and that is diminished the appeal like it will here. So it's going to be interesting. China is a different play, isn't it? Because China by 2030, according to Michael Dunn, and if Michael Dunn says it, I'm buying it. But according to Michael Dunn, they'll have the capacity to produce 75% of all new cars in the world. And they already are overproducing for their own country. And so they're feverishly looking for every market possible to go in, including ours, which will likely not happen in the near future. But where does that leave us in terms of EVs in the United States? Not global, but in the U.S. You don't have money going into infrastructure in all likelihood for charging. Do you think that it kind of settles in, stagnates where it is, and at some point it's going to find a path?
Yeah. The rollback on infrastructure investment is the most problematic of them all. Because at least in a global context, while innovation continues, and it continues here too, not maybe to the same degree, right? But so long as that innovation continues and competition continues, economies of scale and price of battery pack manufacturing and broader manufacturing efficiency finds its way, the forces are certainly continuing to move in the right direction, albeit at a different velocity from what some people used to think. But I don't get anchored too much to the idea of 50% adoption by 2030. That was never realistic. We were just nowhere close to being ready for that. And the byproduct of that, I don't want to call it a mandate, but the byproduct of that aspiration was that so many products were rushed to market. And that was the experience for many early adopters in EVs. They paid a lot of money for vehicles that just frankly weren't even all that useful. Their range was not very high. The price point was much higher compared to an equivalent ICE vehicle. And the destination charging network was either not fully available where most people lived, or in many cases built, but not totally operational or all that functional. So suddenly we have a bad taste in our mouth of what it looks like to be EV adopters, when the reality is the experience is much better than that when it's done properly. So I'm feeling very optimistic from the standpoint of continuing to persevere where it makes sense to do it, but not get ahead of ourselves, if that makes sense.
Sure. Tesla, to say that Elon, he's such an interesting dude, man.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, may quite possibly be the most efficient, productive human in the history of mankind.
Yeah.
No wasted time, no wasted energy. If you think about what he has created, it's hard to wrap your brain around it.
He's the greatest entrepreneur of our time.
He is. And
nobody convinced me otherwise.
And Steve Jobs was a hard act to follow, but Elon, right. It's hard to argue. But with that being said, to say that he's had a few missteps on the Tesla side would be an understatement. And Tesla at this point, is stumbling, is challenged. Their sales are down, and obviously the stock price has been hit pretty hard. I still am bullish on Tesla, personally, in the long term. I think anybody who bets against that company in the long term is crazy. Now, whether that's robo-taxis or whether it's robots or anything else, I'm just not betting against that dude. I'm not. But with that being said, with his attention, Jimmy, seemingly squarely pointed towards robo-taxis and robots, and his eyes off of the automotive side to a certain extent. Cybertruck, let's be honest, swing and a miss. It's been a relatively significant cyber flop, in my opinion. And I'm not talking about the memes and people making fun of the vehicle. You could like it, hate it, or otherwise love it.
Have you driven one?
Yes.
Yeah, it's remarkable.
It's astonishing.
I am dumbfounded by steer-by-wire and four-wheel steering.
The performance of it is just like nothing else you'll ever drive. However, it's just obviously it's not going to hit their numbers. And at this point, I think that it's on the way down. But how does Tesla recover? I mean, you've heard about the Tesla 2 for a while, and he wants to build even a more affordable car, obviously, like the Tesla 2, but with his eyes elsewhere in order to drive that stock value back up. Where do you think that leaves Tesla in that market?
Yeah. First of all, you were correct. It's DJ Smokey Smoke. I texted Jonathan. So you win this round. Secondly,
still undefeated.
So Elon more or less confirmed on the latest earnings call that an affordable model is coming. And in fact, they've already started production in small number. And it's effectively a less expensive Model Y. In order to get to the point where that is rolling off the line, there's been a lot of work behind the scenes, much longer than anybody realizes. And I'm not speaking about any insider or confidential information, but having worked there for a long time, one thing that I noticed is that oftentimes by the time we were revealing something or announcing something, a lot of work had gone on behind the scenes, an entire iceberg's worth that people were not privy to. And that's not a reflection necessarily of whether or not he or anybody on his leadership team was dedicating time to it. What makes its way into the headlines and what they're speaking about publicly is not always an exact reflection of where their attention is. So for whatever that's worth, the biggest opportunity for that company on the automotive front is to sell a more affordable automobile. That's the biggest thing. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens when this vehicle starts rolling off the line and hitting showrooms, I would assume in Q4, immediately following the tax credits being sunset. And the Cybertruck, it has two problems, right? The first one is that not everybody loves to look at it. And that's okay. It wasn't designed for everybody to love to look at it. I actually personally love looking at it, but I know I'm not a normal person. It's expensive. It's an expensive vehicle. So I'm reserving judgment on growth for the automotive business for that day when the affordable model rolls off the line. And I think it's going to be one of the most important days in the company's modern history.
Do you see, Tesla is very unique. They really are in the entire ecosystem of EV OEMs. They're really the only one that has the multiple channels of revenue, whether it's battery credits or charging credits or carbon credits. Insurance, finance,
used cars. Don't forget used cars. Including its own retail operation for used cars because there's no dealer network.
They have, I think, 7 different channels of revenue coming off that. I think I had a post about 3 years ago where I compared it to the iPhone, where the iPhone, likewise, the second largest revenue line for Apple today is services. It's not products, it's services. So, I think they're very similar. No traditional OEM can match that. Some have tried. And I don't see Lucid and Polestar as being able to hold on long term, especially in the environment we're about to go into. Tesla can, for a lot of reasons. And he also owns most of his supply chain, right? Nobody else does. So I'm wondering, from your perspective, we've got roughly 50 different EV models out there. Do you see Lucid and Polestar as having long-term viability? And by the way, the last thing about Lucid and Polestar, they produce passenger cars, which is the lowest performing segment in automotive. Rivian, on the other hand, RJ was smart enough to say, I'm going pickup and SUV. Super smart. If you're going to have a short model lineup, not a bad two to start with. These guys said, no, we're going to go cars, which is the weakest performing aspect of our industry. So with that being said, Jimmy, what do you think about the prospects long term of Lucid and Polestar?
I actually have quite a bit of optimism if you take a really long-term view. If you talk about Lucid first, they've made some significant investments in manufacturing capacity, picking up the assets from Nikola. They've only launched 2 models publicly, and it stands to reason that there's probably a lot more behind the curtain there too that we can probably get excited about. It's very much a software-defined vehicle. It feels like a Tesla in that way, and they seem to always have tricks up their sleeve when it comes to raising capital when they need to, or announcing high caliber partnerships like the Uber announcement fairly recently. I think so long as they can continue to be strategically nimble, but cement their operation and ability to continue to launch product and find drivers for the product, they'll find a way. Polestar, I actually feel optimistic about as well, but for very different reasons. Primarily their ownership. It just doesn't seem to me like an entity that is in true danger of insolvency anytime soon. I think the elimination of the tax credits and also the situation around tariffs are going to be really challenging for them in the immediate term. But thinking about it in a global context in particular, I'm not really worried about them continuing to be around.
Interesting. I mean, this is a company that had financial challenges a very short time ago, right? And, with Geely in China, right? And they found basically a lifeline, but I don't know that I would consider a lifeline as something that would cause me to believe they have long-term viability.
Well, it's just a question of if they'll always have lifelines or not.
That's my point.
That's where I'm going at it.
A company that needs lifelines and is typically going to continue to rely on lifelines until they fix the fundamental challenge. And that's what I'm saying. I don't know if that happens or not. So do you see anybody going forward in the next 5 or 10 years other than the Chinese brands, for example, like BYD? When you go to Europe, you go to other continents right now, BYDs are seemingly everywhere. Mm-hmm. So actually, I'll pivot. Do you ever see BYD coming to the United States? Do you see the Chinese manufacturers breaking through and coming to the U.S. the way the Korean manufacturers did in the 80s and the Japanese in the 60s?
Oh, yeah.
What makes that happen? Currently, there doesn't seem to be the appetite for that. But what do you think is the tipping point?
Well, where they're really going to continue to crush us anytime soon is affordability. Mm-hmm. And what's yet to be seen is, can they also crush us on technology? Like, does it become a burdensomely expensive value proposition to not have that offering on the table? And I think there's a true risk of that because they're innovating so quickly on both of those paradigms. And I don't think we domestically are showing up competitively enough just yet.
There's no question about that. But here's the thing. Until or unless they're allowed to sell in this country, that's a moot point. Right? They can dominate and wreak havoc in other markets like the EU, and they are. But they can't. That can't happen here until we cross that bridge. Right now, there's not an appetite. And I think, interestingly, I think there's some retail dealers that would either enthusiastically or quietly would love to see a couple of those manufacturers come over because they would love to have a more affordable new car option. They'd love to see their new car volumes go up.
Right.
But they're in a completely different place than the OEMs, right? Think of one OEM who would like to see that happen. There's not a single one. That would be just a death blow for some manufacturers.
But here's like the problem that I wrestle with a little bit. Like, it would be a death blow because they're not ready to compete. So to some extent, are we contributing to the problem by providing them with a somewhat infinite lifeline of fending off the most formidable competition?
Well, I think that's a very fair question. I think there's a larger question that, did we abdicate, whether you say abdicate our responsibility or our opportunity to continue to own new car productivity, because with all the JVs that have happened in China and the moving production overseas, we're the ones that put them in position to have new car production superiority. Mm-hmm. And they didn't just come in across the water and take that, right? We contributed to that. So now they're so far down the line, so far, I think, more advanced. I mean, think about where you could create a solid state battery, 400-mile range with incredible technology for under 30 grand. It's just like, how do you compete with that? And like you said, all right, well, what if we let them in? All right, well, that's not going to fix anything. If I'm one of these traditional OEMs, I don't own my supply chain. I don't control my pricing. And I never will, honestly, at least not for the foreseeable future. So that's why I think it would be, from an OEM's perspective, a very, very bad day. Completely different than for maybe consumers or for dealers. It's going to be interesting to see how that wrestling match turns out. And by the way, this letter from the Alliance, right? The Alliance for OEMs,
yeah,
which was a surprise to say the least, and I think a slap in the face to dealers, and OEMs are contributing to that because they're attacking the franchise system. And to me, that kind of is, if we were playing poker, if that's not a tell on where they're going or where their mindset is, I don't know what is, Jimmy. But they squarely seem to be trying to play chess, thinking a couple moves ahead, but they just basically showed their hand. And I don't see that going well for them. I don't agree with it. I think it was a misstep. And like I said, I think it's a slap in the face to all dealers that have supported and been great partners to these OEMs. Jimmy, any final words? Let's get back to just being purely EV only. Alex, Lawrence, that was for you. Being EV only, any final words on Plug, on what you're excited about, and where you think the opportunities are for EVs going forward?
Yeah, well, do you want to be on the line here while I call this dealer and congratulate them?
We've never had a live caller.
Let's do this. So
I feel like we're one of those old-fashioned radio love lines, that late night call in.
That's right.
I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller, those types of deals.
That's right. So to recap, 699 days ago, we sold our very first EV on Plug. And today we sold the 1,000th. And let's call customer right now and break the news to him.
When you say customer, this is the dealer that bought it.
That's right. It was a dealer that bought the car in our auction literally 2 minutes before I got on this Zoom call. Like, it was the 11th hour.
Love it.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited to tell him. Hope he picks up. Adam, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. In full disclosure, not only am I recording this, but I'm actually live on a podcast with David Spisak right now, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Amazing. Well, Adam, as you know, I'm really grateful to you for being a very active buyer on Plug. And you might not know exactly the date, but it was September 1st, 2023, the very first time we sold an EV in our auction. And today, we sold our 1,000th, and you were the buyer of the 1,000th EV Unplugged. Thank you, and congratulations.
Thank you very much, and credit to Martin as well. That dude's crafty, and he does everything he can to make these deals close. A lot of those buys give him some credit as well. So, but yeah, that's awesome. 1,000 cars, man. Congratulations to you guys. You guys are. I mean, just the sheer number of cars that you guys list. I mean, like today, there are quite a few cars on there compared to, not very long ago. But yeah, I love the variety you guys are starting to get now. I remember when you first started out, it was pretty much only Teslas. And, at least for our dealership, that's a super competitive market. So we haven't had a ton of success with them lately, but just the other stuff with, everything else you guys are running with the Mach-E's and the electric BMWs now really gives us more opportunity also to swing away at those.
Incredible. Well, Adam, you obviously have my cell phone, so literally call me 24/7 if there's any way I can be useful to you. Otherwise, thanks for everything, and congratulations on being number 1,000. We'll send you, we'll send your team a nice, gesture of our gratitude at some point in the near future.
That sounds like a plan. I appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
All right, man. Thank you. Take care.
Yeah.
Bye.
Well, that is a first ever. That's never happened. I've never had a live call happen, and man, what a just a stroke of luck to be able to have you on today, and to have you be celebrating your 1,000th car already. And by the way, as an aside, just to speak about, to wrap up and say, hey, there really is a market. There is an opportunity. Here's a CDJR store, right?
That's right.
And where's he located?
Arizona.
Okay, so he's not in California.
Nope.
Right? This is not a EV heavy franchise. This is the least EV heavy, EV oriented franchise on earth, perhaps. Stellantis in Arizona. And I bring it up because it's not lost on me that the guy has bought 130 of those 1,000 cars. So it would be an understatement for me to say this dude gets it. Right?
Oh, yeah.
He's leaning in, and he's made money 130 times off of Plug. That's pretty cool. So if that's not kind of a not only is the 1,000th car exciting, but I think even a larger testimonial is having a Stellantis dealer come to Plug 130 times to find the right car, the right EV. Something tells me that guy's going to have a huge August and September. Jimmy Douglas, what a pleasure to have you on. Long time coming, very much worth the wait. Super excited for the continuing evolution and growth of Plug. And obviously anything that we can do to support you, regardless of circumstances, I think you're going to end up just fine. EVs are going to end up continuing to find their way on the road, especially pre-owned EVs. They're going to continue, I think, to be quite possibly the most affordable, value-driven option for people looking to buy a car out there. So, man, just wishing you much success, and thank you for taking the time to join me.
Appreciate you, David. Thank you.
Happy to have you. Hey, for everybody listening, if you have questions about the EV market now during Q3, how do I take advantage of it? You can find Jimmy's contact and Plug's contact information by going to davidspisak.com. There's also show notes there, so in case you didn't have the chance to scribble anything down, please take the time to share the episode out if you'd be so kind. If you know anybody else that would benefit from the information Jimmy shared or would be just intrigued by it, please take the time to leave a review if you are so inclined. We love them all. I read them all, and I appreciate them all very much. And mostly, I just really appreciate you taking the time to hang out and listen to the one and only Jimmy Douglas. And I look forward to seeing you next time on the David Spisak Show. Thanks so much, Jimmy. Thank you.